All right, good afternoon, and happy Monday? Definitely Monday, definitely Monday. They all start to blend in after a while. This morning, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, addressed the Security Council at a high-level debate on mercenary activities in Africa. The Secretary General said that the shadowy nature of mercenary activities makes data hard to come by, but while the numerical picture may be murky, the impact of mercenaries is all too clear. He highlighted illicit activities and trafficking by terrorist and mercenary groups in the Sahel, the alleged involvement of mercenaries in post-election violence in Côte d'Ivoire in 2010, and the many violations of human rights and humanitarian law against civilians in the Central African Republic. The Secretary General said meeting these challenges require stronger legal regimes, globally and nationally, and increased bilateral, regional, and international cooperation, adding that we need to examine the political, economic, social, and psychological factors that give rise to mercenary activities. And as you will have heard yourselves this morning, the Secretary General on his way into the Council said a few words about Venezuela, and he said he's been following with concern the evolution of the situation in that country, adding that he's been in contact with leaders of a number of initiatives by several groups of countries, but he stressed that the UN Secretariat had decided not to be part of any of these groups in order to give credibility to the UN's continued offer of good offices to the parties to be able to, at their request, to help find a political solution to the crisis. Turning to Yemen, the Supervisory Committee on the implementation of the prisoner exchange agreement for Yemen is scheduled to reconvene in Amman tomorrow. The committee includes representatives of the government of Yemen and Ansar Allah and is co-chaired by the Office of the Special Envoy for Yemen, Martin Griffiths, and the International Committee for the Red Cross. Mr. Griffiths and the president of the ICRC, Peter Maurer, are scheduled to take part in the first day of the activities, of the meetings of the committee. During this round of technical meetings, the Supervisory Committee will discuss steps taken by the two parties to finalize the list of prisoners to advance the implementation of the agreement. Meanwhile, the third meeting of the Redeployment Coordination Committee, chaired by Patrick Kammert, convened yesterday on board a UN vessel that's berthed in the port of Hodeidah, and that meeting is continuing today. Both the government of Yemen and the Houthi RCC representatives are present aboard the ship. Both parties have reiterated their commitment to implementing the Hodeidah aspects of the Stockholm Agreement, and in particular underscore their commitment to finding a solution that would open up the Hodeidah-Sana road to allow humanitarian access to the Red Sea mills. And our humanitarian colleagues report that the UN Central Emergency Response Fund has allocated $2 million to support critical Ebola preparedness activities to protect an estimated 440,000 people in high-risk areas of South Sudan as the outbreak continues in neighboring Democratic Republic of the Congo. Although there have been no cases confirmed in South Sudan, the World Health Organization said the country is at a very high risk due to its proximity to the DRC. The funds will help strengthen surveillance, build case management capabilities, enhance lab services, and increase infection control and prevention. Our colleague Allegra Baiocchi, the humanitarian coordinator for Cameroon, and representatives from UNHCR and local authorities visited the Gora refugee site in the far north of the country on February 1st. That site is holding 35,000 Nigerian refugees following clashes between non-state armed groups and the Nigerian military. Aid organizations are providing food, shelter, and water and sanitation, among other services. At the end of January, the World Food Program began distributing food for 13,500 Nigerian refugees. However, the response needs to be scaled up significantly to cope with the influx of people, with many refugees reluctant to return to Nigeria's Rand area or any other camp in Ngala without assurances for their safety and security. Aid workers are working with authorities to protect the refugees' right to asylum and to relocate them to safer areas away from the border. The 2019 humanitarian response plan for Cameroon is seeks nearly $300 million to assist 2.3 million vulnerable people. And food security in Somalia has deteriorated slightly due to below average seasonal rains in 2018, the lingering effects of the 2016-17 drought, and ongoing conflicts in parts of the country. That's according to the latest analysis of the Food and Agriculture Organization, managed by the Food Security and Nutrition Analysis Unit and the Famine Early Warning System Network. More information online. And today is World Cancer Day. Nearly every family in the world is touched by cancer, which is now responsible for almost 1 in 6 deaths globally, according to the World Health Organization. This year, WHO is focusing on cervical cancer with the theme Cervical Cancer. It is preventable, treatable, and it is time to eliminate it. The agency warned that accelerated action is needed to achieve global targets for reducing premature mortality from cancer and ensuring universal health coverage, adding that a renewed emphasis on strengthening health systems is needed to ensure early diagnosis and accessible, high-quality care for patients. More on WHO's website. Tomorrow, you will have the pleasure of hearing from David Shearer, the Special Representative and head of the UN mission in South Sudan and the head of the peacekeeping mission there. And today our honor roll has reached 35, thanks to a very cold country filled with very warm people. And I'll let you guess what country that is. No, but this is UN. The fact that it's not Finland doesn't mean that they're not very warm people. Iceland is the right answer. I don't want to get in trouble with the Finns, who are indeed very warm as well. I will take your questions, I guess, now. Yes, James.
2 questions for you. Before I ask my question on Yemen, I just on the issue of mercenaries, what does the UN consider a mercenary? Is there because the SG's speech was relatively short, and it seemed that the basic term wasn't defined in this debate. What's the difference between a mercenary and a military contractor, or are they the same thing?
It's a very good question. I mean, I could give you what I think is the difference. I will look to see if there's actually a legal difference within UN terms.
Okay, moving on to Yemen. The talks, as you say, on the ship continue. Is there anything more you can tell us about that? Also, I was trying to work out which ship it is. Do you have the name of this ship?
No, we will not share the name of the...
Because there are 2 WFP ships, apparently.
All I can tell you is that it's a UN-chartered ship. I think it was a very creative solution by General Cameron to try to get the parties... it's hard to predict. I think what... General Cameron's message was underscoring the fragility of the situation, and the need to see progress. We have a kernel, in a sense, of a ceasefire in a specific area in Yemen. We need to secure that and build on that moving forward.
So I hadn't quite finished my question. I also wanted your view on the other talks that are taking place in Oman tomorrow, which are the prisoner exchange talks. That was something that was first mooted as planned to take place before Stockholm. Can you tell us what the numbers involved and the importance of this prisoner exchange in the whole process?
I think the exchange of prisoners in any conflict is highly symbolic. It shows a commitment of both parties to start trusting each other. And I think it's also obviously a very emotional issue for the families involved. And I think it's a confidence building measure by any measure. And it's a very important one. And I think as I said, it really underscores the issue of trust, which is something that has been lacking in this particular conflict. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Steph. With regard to the Secretary General remarks this morning on Venezuela, what are the tangible measures he's planning to take to use his good offices to try to mediate the problem currently taking place in Venezuela? Does he plan to go to the region, to Venezuela and the region, or to invite President Maduro?
No, I mean, as Secretary General is not his offer of good offices are very clear that it is, as in any conflict or problem, both parties, or if they're in case multiple ones, both parties have to request and agree to his good offices. His offer to that end stands. There's no trip plan. There's no headline-grabbing trip, which may or may not work in the plans. The Secretary General is very focused on continuing his contacts with leaders around the world and underscoring yet again the availability of his good offices. Yes, sir.
We have found that we're very glad to see that Secretary General has sent out earlier today the congratulation message to the Chinese New Year, and because the whole city, actually the whole world, the Chinese community are celebrating this Chinese New Year. What other events we are going to have at the UN headquarters?
I will check. I think there's some other social events planned, but I think the Secretary General was delighted to once again send out a message of hope and prosperity for Chinese communities around the world for the Year of the Pig, if I'm not mistaken.
Thank you.
Thank you. Evelyn.
The mercenary discussion is most confusing. And James's question was right on, like, what is in mercenary? The SG gave examples of where mercenaries are used, but not who they are. Do you have any information of who these mercenaries are? Because most speakers did not give examples, and it's very hard to get a grip on that story.
I mean,
we all agree that mercenaries are bad.
I don't have any more examples than what the Secretary General said. If I'm not mistaken, there is a special rapporteur on the issue of mercenaries, and we can put you in touch with them.
And second,
Yes, ma'am.
You can find that on the website?
I don't know. We'll
I'll
see.
check.
Okay.
Secondly, on Yemen, Amnesty International is one of several organizations that are pointing fingers at the UAE for giving weapons to all sorts of strange militia. Is there anything on that? Any
No,
news
not
on that?
particular. I mean, our message from the beginning has been clear: is that the conflict in Yemen needs a strong commitment to a political solution and to help humanitarian aid, and not more weapons. Masood.
Thank you, sir. On this resurgence of settlers' violence in the occupied West Bank, and you also gave a statement attributed to Secretary General after the Israelis decided to withdraw from that so-called mutual accord. Can you please tell us, has the Secretary General managed to talk to the Israeli Prime Minister or any other Israeli authorities about this issue?
I think this is an issue that Mr. Mladenov has raised both privately and publicly.
But
Frank, I have nothing else to add. Frank.
A bit of a housekeeping issue. When the Secretary General was on the stairs talking to reporters, of course you just read out some of what he talked about, I asked you on TV, did they get it? And they said, no, we're instructed not to shoot the Secretary General.
It was a mistake that's due to...
Can we get this cleared up?
It was a mistake that was due to me typing too quickly email instructions and adding the wrong words in the wrong syntax order, which you can blame on my non-native English-speaking capacity. So it was a mistake.
Can you tell you on TV it's okay in the future to do this?
No, as I said, of course they should cover the Secretary General. The mistake was mine and my fat fingers on my small iPhone.
Okay, so it's okay for them to shoot.
As I said, mea culpa.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
All right. On that self-sacrifice, self-criticism note, I will leave it to you, Monica.